There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Leadership Lunch Chat. I am Amy Vetter, and I'm with Jen Wilson, and we are going to start coming on once a week to really talk about the things that we're hearing in the world, the profession, that we think could help all of you. So what we want to talk about today is going back to work, and we're hearing a lot of that as we get into these new regulations coming out and what we can do and what we can't do. So I want to talk about it from the perspective of what we hear you can do, and then also the perspective of how do we deal with this. So Jen, you want to start and talk about what your impressions have been this week?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we just start by saying that there's this, we all want to get the economy going. So there's a strong pull all of us have to get as much uplift as we can, get back to work as normal. But there's also the strong pull to be healthy. And the whole reason that we went into hiding, shelter in place or stay-at-home orders or whatever you want to call it was to stay healthy. And so I think we've got this, not necessarily conflicting, but the feeling of conflicting values or desires happening right this minute. And it's the beginning of this rumbling, and it's like back to work or stay safe, or maybe a little bit of CDC, disease and virus management officials against politicians or something, or against business leaders. And it feels a little bit like we're starting to have some tension.
Yeah. So what have you been hearing as far as accounting firms thinking about taking their staff back into the workplace, or even just corporations and so forth?
Yeah, well, first, let's just say that one of the big ahas of this whole COVID-19 crisis was, oh my gosh, remote work works. People are responsible. They're adults.
Yeah.
They'll do their work. They can serve clients. They can respond to clients and produce deliverables from home. So I think that's an aha folks have. And I think most firms realize that they don't have to rush to get back to the office. I think what's happening is people are starting to fear that their firms are going to ask them to come back to the office. I did have this week one group in a state that's governor has said, hey, it's okay, let's open back up. That group was asked to come back to work this week, in fact, today. And they weren't ordered to come back. They were just encouraged to come back to the office.
Right.
And that was scary for them, for some of them anyway.
Yeah. And, totally, being a small business owner myself, and I, besides, what we do in the profession, I have a yoga studio. And I think there's a balance between what we want to do as a business and where we get advice as well. And so I had a team meeting actually this week with a number of my staff members that are also medical professionals as well, and giving their feedback of what they're seeing and hearing and what we may need to consider if we open up. So I think it's important as a leader, if you're thinking about opening up your business, that you're getting that outside expertise of what it really means. So when we were talking through it, it's a limitation of how big a class can be or how many people can be in the business. It's also taking each person's temperature as they walk in through the door. It's cleaning up after everybody every few minutes. So, I mean, when you really think about what the responsibility is of opening a business right now, you need to make sure that you're getting some outside expertise rather than just reading things off the internet, to make sure that you're keeping people safe if that's the route that you go.
I agree. And I think, I've been encouraging all the business leaders that I know to not just listen to their state guidelines or their state politicians. That's important because some states have stronger recommendations than the CDC. Like Michigan, let's say, has stronger orders in place. So you have to know what your state is saying, but you also need to listen to CDC guidelines and read them every day. They're evolving every day. They have all sorts of, one of their recommendations is if you leave your house, your shelter, you should have a mask and gloves on. that's one of the CDC recommendations. And I can't really picture practicing yoga in a mask and gloves. I'm not sure that feels like it works, but it might. I just think that we have to understand what science is telling us so that we don't put our people at risk. And I really think there's two things employers should think about. And one is, who are your people going to say you were during this crisis about their health and safety? Did you put it before commerce? Did you put it before clients? Did you put it before your own selfish interest? They're going to remember that. And second, what is your liability if you encourage them to come back to work and they get sick and end up one of those very unfortunate people that goes to ICU and all of that? What's the risk?
Well, and I also think, besides getting feedback from, professionals as well, it's really important to speak to your people individually and understand how they're feeling, and where, like, for the people that aren't comfortable to come into the workplace, how could you, modify a working situation so that they are comfortable? I mean, I feel the pressure just like everyone else to get things back to normal. I mean, this is a horrible economic, downturn for so many business owners, and myself included. But I think it's really important that when we've got people that work for us, that it's not a one-to-many decision. We might have an umbrella decision, and then we've got to talk to each person individually. And those are the kinds of conversations I've been having with my team members is, what are you comfortable with? What are you hearing? How do we create a flexible workspace or place where people can feel comfortable? Or what do we combine between remote and in the workplace as well? And there's got to be a balance to that, even when we're feeling pressure to get things back to normal, because we don't know what normal looks like. And we also don't know from a customer standpoint, there is, we have to remember that they're all under this as well. So there's an appearance as a business if you are forcing people into the office and your clients don't agree with that.
Right.
Well, so you've got to kind of think about all of these different aspects of, how is that going to affect you?
And we've always talked about on the talent side to have one size fits one talent management strategies. You want to have a corporate talent management strategy, but the truth is every person has a different set of circumstances. And, if we don't have daycare open and we don't have school open, and you encourage your people to come back to the office, they can't. They have kids, and those kids will be at home, those that do have kids. And so that's an example,
Right.
Of where, like our schools in Nebraska, they just said, well, guess what? Graduates, congratulations, you finished your senior year, and the rest of you just didn't have a fourth quarter, and you'll still be able to be promoted to the next grade, and we're finished. And they're doing some work, bonus work sort of thing, but there's no real class happening anymore. And so if my kids were younger, they're not, but if they were younger, I wouldn't be able to go back to an office,
Right.
and leave them at home, and so I think it has to be one size fits one. And also not just that person's circumstances, but what is their work, and so if their work could so easily be done at home and that's what's more comfortable for them, then why wouldn't we let them just keep doing that?
Exactly. Yes. And so I think it's really training as a leader right now. It's an interesting training because you're being pushed out of your comfort zone in so many ways. There's so many things about being a leader that, people can't understand when they're not in your shoes because they don't have the same financial burdens. And, when a decision's coming across your table, your brain is thinking in 10 different directions of that decision versus the person that's putting it forward has just their one perspective, right? But it's pushed us in ways of, technology you might have been holding back doing, and now you've been forced to change your business processes, and also in ways of being empathetic to people's circumstances and how we lead in time of change, and show that we are compassionate in this time. And, you and I have been talking a lot about generous leadership. And I think this is the time, if any time, showing generosity is going to go a long way into the future.
I agree 100%. And I think that that's the number one attribute in a business that sort of separates the men from the boys or the women from the girls in terms of awesome leadership is generosity, and not putting my selfish interests and the selfish interests of our partnership or the owners of the business ahead of that of our people. And always trying to look at that greater good before we put ourselves forward. It's hard to do, and these are scary times. And I know there are a lot of small business owners, certain restaurants. It's kind of interesting. There's winners and losers in this whole thing. And a lot of small business restaurants are really losing because they can't have people in. Then there's others that you can't get through on their phone lines. You know, they're to go, and their delivery processes are amazing, and they're hiring like crazy. And so, you know, sometimes we feel like I just want to go back to the way it was. And that would be my selfish interest because it's easier. Come on back to the office and let's just get back to normal. But there is not going to be the old normal as the new normal, I don't think. And I think ingenuity, innovation, and your people can help you. You know, you could say, here's our dilemma. Here's our dilemma. You know, here's what we're grappling with. Help us figure out how to do it. And I think your people will have a lot of good ideas for, you know, first, what to do on the go back to work orders. But second, what parts of this crisis management, these new processes, this new way of being should we keep?
Yeah.
You know, what can we retain from this? And then also, are there new ways of operating when we go back that are new innovations we need to think about? And I would, you know, maybe form a committee, get a group of people together and start having that. What does the new normal look like? And do some brainstorming and innovation around that. Even if your state's still in lockdown, I think that would be a really good exercise to start dreaming about. What does our new business look like after COVID-19?
Well, and pushing for transparency. So, you know, that was a real amazing thing that came out of my meeting this week with my team. Was I was very transparent of where we're at, what's been happening with the business and so forth. And the way that the team individually has reached out and stepped up, I mean, I cannot tell you, my heart is like overflowing. But it also shows that you're not in it alone as a leader when you bring it up to everyone else, because everyone wants success for where they work. Like they believe in it, else they wouldn't be there, and they want it to work out. So if you're not transparent on what's happening, you're leaving them in the dark and not letting them find ways to help you as well. And you'd be amazed of some of the things that people have done and will step up and do just because they care. They're human and they want to see the business succeed, their clients succeed as well too.
Yeah. So we have a saying at Convergence, and it's in the absence of information, people make up their own.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's almost always negative.
Yes.
And so, you know, and there's a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt and a lot of negative news and a lot of layoff stories being told in our profession. And people are hearing things. And so when there's silence from leadership, people, you know, think, oh, this is not good. And they either make up, you know, we must be doing terrible. And any minute now, you know, every email they get for a meeting, they're like, oh, you know, and they make up the scary part of it.
Yeah.
Or they're thinking, we must be rolling in the dough and these guys are, you know, they're not being transparent about it or whatever. And that's why the silence exists. And so they're making up negative things there. So, you know, we have to be clear with our people as much as we can. I did the same thing right away when the crisis hit. Within that first week, in the middle of March, we had an all hands meeting and I said, let me tell you how much cash we have. And let me tell you where AR is. And let me tell you what our monthly nut is for payroll and also the other expenses. And let's talk through what sort of projection we have right now, if nothing else changes, you know, where we are with money and what we're going to have to do together as a team to make it through. When the PPP came out and there were ideas about the PPP, you know, I brought the group together and we talked about the PPP and should we do that? You know, and these people are not people I usually consult for daily cash decisions. But I wanted them in there with me to understand where we were and to understand how committed I was to keep them intact, but that we were going to have to work together to do it. And
Yeah.
it has been awesome. I mean, it's been amazing. And we're working around the clock to shift our business and pivot our engagements to online. We do a lot remote anyway, but you were right when you said your people will step up and they will help you in ways that are so generous and so, innovative too. It just gets their juices flowing and ideas and ingenuity, and they suddenly say, why don't we try this? And why don't we try that? Brianna on our team called a meeting and said, I just want to talk about crazy ideas I've been having. And by the way, we immediately implemented a couple of them. We rolled one out already, and we're working on another one. They weren't crazy at all. They were brilliant.
Right.
We'll find out how brilliant. But when you ask your people to help, they will.
Absolutely. So I think, just some wrap up for this conversation. There's been some key things about, as a leader, we need to make sure we're being transparent, we're being generous and compassionate with people's circumstances, but we're also getting outside expertise from the business that are people that are medical professionals or have that kind of expertise as well to guide us if we do open up. What are the things that we need to do to make sure that we do it in the right way, we do it in an ethical way, we do it in a moral way, so that at the end of the day, when this is all over, people knew we cared. It wasn't just about the business.
Right. And paying attention to CDC guidelines. Ask your labor attorney, if you have one, what they're recommending right now. Definitely talk to other business leaders, form that innovation group to both innovate new ideas right now inside the lockdown, but also ideas for when we go back. What's the new normal going to be? I think those are all wonderful possibilities for people to follow out of this discussion. And I just wanted to say to you, Amy, that I really appreciate, we've been meeting weekly and having these kind of conversations. We thought we'd just start broadcasting them and hoping that other people would come into them with us. And so I just want you to know how much I appreciate, as a business owner, having had you to talk to about this along the way as well.
Oh, me too. And I think that's even a great example for people too, is new relationships get formed in all this, right? That, a lot of times we feel alone, and it's been so amazing to be able to bounce things off with you as well. And we hope that our conversations will be helpful each week. So we'll get on each Friday around this time at noon Eastern time, and just do a 15 to 20 minute chat, but on what we're hearing that week, and to see if we can help as well. And so if you have comments or questions that you want us to cover, make sure to let us know during the week, and we will be sure to answer them.
For sure.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.